One of those complex ideas is the Enneagram, which is so much more than a typing system. It's how to grow also. So I'm going to turn it over to Cher, and happy to do that. Thank you.
So it is called the Essential Enneagram Empowered 12-Step Workshop. And essential in this case means basic, not necessary. So even most people, when they see it, it's like, oh, this is essential, but that's not that's not at least my intent. Okay, so what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to basically walk you through session 0, which we covered like last Sunday, not yesterday, but a week ago. And I'm going to walk you through that. So it's almost exactly like that was. And then once I'm finished with that, that'll take 25 minutes, maybe half an hour. And then I'm going to show you what's included in the rest of the workshop. So there's a recording of last week's and yesterday's session 0 and 1. And that way, if you are interested in attending the rest of the sessions, you can just watch the recordings and you're all caught up. So anyway, that's the goal. So I would imagine this is going to take 40 minutes or so, unless I get really verbose, which is entirely possible. So, okay. I want to give you just a little bit of history in me. I won't camp out here, I promise. I have been in the OA program for 20 years. And during that 20 years, I've worked my program. I know a lot of people in this room, I'm sure, have been in recovery a long, long time. So 20 years of working that. I worked the steps through many, many times. I love the big book. It is poetry to my soul. So it is something that I read all the time because I just think that Bill W. was an awesome writer, and I'm really into really good literature. So, and I just think it's beautiful. I recently, within the last 5 years or so, started learning the Enneagram. And the thing that most, I guess, depressed me about the Enneagram is there is so much information and it is just so deep that to learn it, it's you almost have to be dedicated to it, which means you almost have to be retired, which I've been retired 2 years. So I really focused on it for those 2 years, but it is so much information. So those of you who know the Enneagram, this will mean something to you. I am an Enneagram 8. The title of that is the Challenger. And that mostly means that most of my defects, most of my misbehavior when I was younger, before program, was getting in people's faces. You've all known people like that. Okay. During my the last 30 years of my career, I was a software and training leader. So I was a trainer for a long time. I had the opportunity to travel the world for a decade. And I mean the world, everywhere, but I've been in every continent teaching except Antarctica, and I won't probably ever go there, I don't think. Anyway, but what I learned during that time that I was traveling the world, teaching people who spoke different languages, is my very best skill is to take something that's very complex and break it into something that's tactical and practical that allows you to take action on it. And so during this time that I was retired, just here recently, I was like, wait, I could do that with the Enneagram, couldn't I? And the answer to that is, yeah, I can. So that's what this is about. All right. This is a picture of me at my highest weight. But I really, I mean, I weighed almost 300 pounds at that point in time. This is a picture of me now. And the main reason I have this up here isn't even about the weight. You can set the weight aside. The real issue is which of these is different than the others, right? The woman on the right lives free. And that I have to tell you, I live free most days. I live free. I live free of compulsion. Not every day, right? Some days it haunts me, but that is not the normal way that I live. And I have tools to be able to take care of that when it does haunt me. So it's a completely different life than I had before I came to program. And so I'm very, very, very grateful for that, I have to say. Okay, let's talk about the goal of this course. So first of all, the goal, it is a personal journey. It is so tempting to type other people, and you inevitably you can't help but do that, but that's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to basically understand the relationship between your false self that your ego built, and your true self, and to treat yourself with unrelenting compassion because you're human. Okay, and I don't think none of you have read kind of my intro, but my intro, basically, I worked the 12 steps during that time. It saved my life, and I worked the 12 steps. But what happens, I work with other people, that's fine. But when I'm going back and trying to work on myself, every time I went back into the steps again and again, I felt more and more self-contempt. And so the Enneagram allowed me to have unrelenting compassion for myself, which made a huge difference in my spiritual growth. Okay, so the way that we do this unrelenting compassion is we recognize the unseen forces that drive our behavior, and the passions, which some call defects, some call defenses, and the fixation, perceptions, stories we tell ourselves. By catching ourselves in the act when our ego causes us to act out our most persistent defenses, right? It's like, where the hell did this come from? Well, we know where it came from, right? And then to gently remind ourselves to return to our true shining self. That's really the goal of this whole program, is to be able to, that I don't know if you felt self-contempt, but that's what happened with me. I would just, Cheryl, you're such a loser. You're such an idiot. You can't, I not only don't talk to myself that way, I don't even feel that way about myself anymore. And the Enneagram is part of that, certainly. Okay. Some things to keep in mind as we go through this. I am not an expert on anything. So during the Q&A session, almost for sure, there's going to be many times I say, I don't know. And I'm fine not knowing. That means I'll learn it. Right? I'll look it up, but I may not know it now. Recovery is a process, not an event. I used to think it needed to be an event, right? Probably because of Bill W's awakening, right? But I don't even want that to happen to me. So it's all good. All right. Self-contempt stops spiritual growth. I do want to talk one more minute about that. Somewhere along the line, it's as if my greater power said to me, and probably not in words, but it was like, you can hate yourself or you can grow spiritually, but you can't do both. So you pick. I'm waiting. I'll sit over here and wait, right? And once I realized that, once I had that realization, I would much rather grow than hate myself. If I can't do both, then I'd much rather grow. And so I've really focused on that for quite some time. All right. We have all types, all Enneagram types in us, but one of them dominates. It just dominates. It's not like we choose which one dominates. There is not one that's sexier than the others, and you don't get to choose which one you are. You just are. And that's what I'm going to cover in here. And once again, I layer the information, and you'll see that here in a second. We do gradient exercises for steady learning, which means every week, gradient, most people think like light to dark color, but it's easy to difficult. So we start out with easy. I call them weekly wrap-up challenges. Easier, and then every week they get more difficult until I haven't finished the 12th one, but I'm like, they're pretty tough as we're going through. I'm like, by the time we hit 12, people are going to be running down the street naked, but I won't have anybody do anything I won't do, and I will not run down the street naked. So that won't happen. Okay, so the gradient exercise is basically for steady learning, and then we have office hours for questions. So at 8 a.m. on Tuesday and Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time on Tuesday and Wednesday, I have office hours where people come and they can ask questions or they can share, because there's, I think this last session, there were 70 people there. So, there's some people that get to share, but not everybody does. So some are coming to the office hours to share, and they're called office hours with Cheryl. So it's just me there, and I answer what I can and help in any way I can. All right. Archetypal, opposite of what of rumor, the Enneagram did not start in Ireland. Just letting you know. No, I'm kidding. I have no idea where it started, but it is archetypal. And what I mean by that is throughout history, right? The diagram is about 100 years old, right? And I think Gurdjieff, who was a psychologist, so this is like psychology and spirituality kind of mushed together, which frankly, so is the 12 steps, right? So anyway, but it is archetypal in that it doesn't matter what religion, it doesn't matter what era during time, it doesn't matter in history, everywhere in the world, in the human world, these 9 types are there, right? So it isn't like some people will say, I don't want you to put me in a box. You're already in the box. And if I'm trying to behave myself, but I wanted to say, you're already in the fucking box, right? So this helps you get out of the box. That's the whole point. Okay. But anyway, so it is archetypal. Throughout history, it has been here, and now it's just described. Just like throughout history, psychology has been there, but now we describe it and we understand what drives things. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move on here. Oh, by the way, I do want to say that's the book that we're reading. But if you decide to join, you don't even really need the book, except there are some like specific type readings that you might want to do. So that's the book. It's called The Enneagram for Recovery by Jenner Kay. And I never have anybody read like an entire. Never are you going to read a whole chapter. You're going to read parts about your own type. That's something else I want to say. So this is an aside. It isn't part of zero. The people that actually attend the class, I have them take a test so that they begin with the understanding of generally the understanding of what Enneagram type they are, because then they can pay attention just to those things. You guys don't have that advantage unless you already know the Enneagram. You don't have the advantage of that. So what I'm going to ask you to do as we go through this is just kind of relax and let feelings come up, because what will happen is the ones that you're like, oh, I am that, or at my worst, oh, that has caused me pain, like that kind of thing. Just let the feelings come up, because you'll be able to identify somewhat, right, what type you are. But the tests are pretty good usually. Okay, I want to do my simple understanding of the Enneagram and how I use it in my 12-step work. And I want to say, those of you in this group that know the Enneagram, this is going to seem super duper simple, but it works for me. So, so I'm going to share it. Okay. So let's say you are a little bitty baby, and you are a baby and you wet your diaper and you're sitting there for 2 whole minutes and your mom has not picked you up. Okay. That, by the way, is where it all starts, right? So there is some nurture part of this, but nature is absolutely a part of this. So a big part of it. So this baby, right? So a type 1 might say, well, isn't this just perfect? I'm sitting here all wet, right? The type 2 would say, oh, this must mean I'm not loved. The type 3 might say and once again, obviously, babies don't have language yet, but you get the idea. So the type 3 might say something like, wait a minute, don't they know who I am? Right? And the type 4 would be, oh my God, this is just terrible. I'm too special to have this happen to me. The 5 would be, this is interesting. I wonder what that is. The 6 would be, I'm going to die. Right? The 7 would be, oh, I kind of like this. This is warm. Right? The 8 would be, well, looks like I'm going to have to take care of it myself. And then the 9 would be, well, you know what? I'll worry about this tomorrow. Okay. So what happens is, from the very, very beginning, when you're an infant, you begin building, your ego begins building this wall that basically says, somehow I have to defend this baby, this child. Now, there are some people in program who basically denigrate the ego, like the ego is this horrible thing. Absolutely. I don't believe that at all. I think the ego is absolutely necessary. We couldn't even survive the playground when we were kids if we didn't have an ego structure. So it builds this ego structure, this wall to protect us as children. We need that, absolutely need that. The problem is, as you mature and become an adult, you don't need the wall so much. And it becomes, as Simon says, it says, do this, we do it without even thinking. We don't even sometimes realize we're doing it. It's like so subconscious to us that it's just, it says act, we act, right? And we don't even see that that's what's happening. And that, my friends, is what brings us to our knees and brings us to program. And when we're in program, then we begin to crack that egg. That is what it is. It's like the shell that's there. And it's hilarious that I have a wall and a shell, but it's true. Both those things are true. Okay. Our first time through the steps, the first time or two, the goal is to crack that shell. It absolutely is. What she says in the book, and I really like this. Remember, if you remember the story of the guy that has in the big book, he has his pants on fire and he's like, why? And they just say, don't worry about why, just jump in the water and put it out, put the fire out. And so the first time or two through the steps, we put that fire out. That's really what has to happen. So if you are somebody who is new to program, don't go to the Enneagram, in my opinion. Don't go to the Enneagram yet, because you really need this program. You need the 12 steps to put that fire out. That is what it does. Will the Enneagram? I suppose so. I don't know. That's not my experience. I mean, because I came to the Enneagram after this, but I'm telling you, the 12 step will put the fire out. But then what happens? I have that shell cracked. What do I do with that? For me, continuing to work the steps wasn't helpful. I mean, with others, sure. But for myself, that wasn't enough. It didn't go deep enough, because it caused me to hate myself. So I had this self-contempt that was there all the time. I would return to those stories and then I hate myself again. It's like, oh, the Enneagram really, really helped me with that. All right. So one of the things that we're going to do as we move through and by the way, we have session 0 because session 1 is chapter 1 and step 1, right? So it all lines up, which for me is very exciting. A little Otherwise, I was A, B, whatever. So anyway, that's why. So session 0 is like the intro. And then chapter 1, step 1, session 1 are all 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Okay. So the steps, what I'll cover in each of these are the steps and our difficulties by type with each step, right? That sounds a little complex. It's not. But basically, And somebody asked before the session, like the difference, like what is the Enneagram? And one of the things I want to say, it is a typology, certainly, but it's way more than that. But when you take like a Myers-Briggs or something, that basically measures and tells you how you show up in the world. And what the Enneagram does is show you how you were wired, right? Because it shows you the motivations. Where do these come from? These motivations that make me act this way. And I will say, as an eights are very obvious because we get in people's faces, right? Other ones don't, or usually don't. Or if you do, it's for different motivations. So anyway, but each of the steps, and I'm going to give an example here. So a type 8, it feels necessary, absolutely necessary for an 8 to be strong and courageous, and right, all of that. Okay. Imagine and basically invulnerable. And step 1 is surrender. Can you imagine how difficult right? It is for somebody who needs to be strong and basically, completely in control of everything. And then suddenly the very first step is surrender. Okay, that's tough. And each of the steps are tough for different reasons for different types. So we covered that. In addition to that, we have the type challenges, which I talked about earlier. Okay, I'm going to give a couple of definitions here as we move forward. And once again, remember what I'm teaching you right now is what is session 0. So you've actually seen, when this is done, you'll have seen session 0, which means you would only have to watch session 1 to be completely caught up. Okay, so when I'm going to use the terminology, and the Enneagram uses the terminology passion. And what we mean by passion isn't what the modern definition of passion, and of course, the work in the 12 steps, you've run into lots of things that have 1939 definitions in the big book. So anyway, but passion does not mean like I'm excited about things. To remember this, just remember the movie, The Passion of the Christ. He wasn't too excited about that, right? So anyway, passion means the thing that causes us suffering. That's what it means. So think defects or think defenses. They keep returning, or in some cases never left, and they seem to cause my suffering. And if you haven't thought about the fact that these defects, because we think about them as like a wrong that we have done. Oh no, I mean, are they? Maybe, I don't know. But they certainly are what caused my suffering. Every single, maybe not every single, but close to every single amend that I owed in step 9 was because I got in someone's face. Almost 100% of them were because of that, right? Which is that passion, right? That defense that I have that I must behave like that. Very thankful most of the time I don't, or at least now if I do, I choose to, right? I still keep the skill of the ability to do that, but I choose not to most times. Okay. And then the virtue. So passion and virtue are the first 2 things. So the virtue is the gift of the spirit that my type gets as a reward when I return to my true self. So the virtue, so the passion for the 8 is basically the passion, the defect is this need to be in control, and this need to be like seem so strong that nothing can harm me. And the virtue, the gift of the spirit of the 8 is it's called innocence, but what it means is to be able to see things through fresh eyes, to be able to look at things from a fresh perspective. Okay, so growth happens in this order. Awareness is first, then comes acceptance, then comes action. So, and maybe this entire course, but certainly the first several weeks are all about awareness, right? And then after that comes your acceptance, and certainly probably after the whole thing comes any kind of action. We have people put their number in front of their name if they know it. And I think that's good because it helps me right away during the question. Not that you have to do that, obviously, you may not know. So, but it helps when during our question and answer session that we can, I have at least some identification where that comes from. Okay. The way I begin this, first of all, as I've said, I've always been an educator, right? That's what I do. And so one of the things that I know about the way everyone learns, but certainly including adults, are icons. And the reason that we know this, you can, right now, this minute, regardless of where you are in the world, you can picture the difference between the Coca-Cola icon and the Pepsi icon. When you see it, it doesn't even have to have a word in it. I don't think it has words in it, right? It doesn't even have to have a word in it. You know exactly, oh, that's Pepsi. Oh, that's Coke. You know that, right? In America, we have like Fritos. You go over and right. As a matter of fact, they had a lawsuit a few years ago where somebody had a bag of chips like that looked very similar to Fritos, and Fritos sued them and won, right? Frito-Lay. So anyway, But the idea here is we do think in icons, so I am using icons. So I have a quick question. If you knew your type, did you look immediately to see what the icon was for that type? You probably did. Almost everybody does. So the way that I teach is I'm going to show, we're going to talk about the icon for just a second, why I chose that. Then I'm going to introduce you to the mantras that go with that. And then finally, I want you to really just let yourself feel whatever you feel when I'm talking about that type. If you know that is your type, it should kind of resonate with you. If you don't know your type at all, just kind of sit back, relax, and hopefully this will crop up some kind of emotion in you. Either absolutely not, right? And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get there. Okay, so we're going to start with, is there anything else I wanted to cover here? I don't think so. Okay, here is type 1. Type 1, I picked the little beaver because beavers are very industrious and they do things right. I don't know if beavers live in the rest of the world, but they certainly are in America. And they build dams to block water, waterways. And so they're very industrious. The type 1 is also known as a perfectionist, and their passion is anger, usually itself, and it's usually repressed. Their virtue, the gift of the spirit that they get from working the program and returning to their true selves, is serenity, and that means being serene in all circumstances. The words that are in the black box there, that is the lie that they live under. So the ones live under the lie of I should be perfect and life should be perfect. Okay, if you've studied the Emotional Sobriety by Alan Berger, I took that class. He's amazing, and that book is amazing. And so, can you imagine a 1 living under that? I should be perfect and life should be perfect, right? Which is about as far from reality as you can get. Okay. The mantra, which is not exactly a mirror image to that lie that they live under, but it's kind of like that, right? And so it basically is the thing that helps dissipate. It begins, if I'm using it all the time, the mantra can begin to help dissipate that ego structure. So the mantra for the 1 is, it isn't always my responsibility. It isn't always my responsibility. Okay, so that's the 1. And if you live under the lie, and I'll tell you what, if you've worked through your program, if you've been in program for years, and you basically cracked that shell, that may not be as obvious to you. So in some cases, you want to look back in your 20s and say, in my 20s, was I like this, right? Was I like that? And once again, be looking at from the perspective of the defect or the defense, right? Look from that perspective. What caused you the pain? What was the biggest pain? What kept showing up over and over and maybe still does occasionally, right? Okay. Type 2. Type 2, I picked this. This is my little dog, Mayhem. I have 2 dogs, Chaos and Mayhem, and they're both little like this. One's black, and then this is Mayhem. And he adores me. He follows me everywhere. So, and that is part of the personality of the 2, which is why I kept this. The 2 is also known as the helper. In OA, very often people will test as a 2 because they want to be a helper, right? Even if they're not wired that way. So this is one we have to really watch out for because we want to be sure that they're not working on that. But because what I want to do is not waste their time working on something that's not even their issue, right? So, okay. And anybody that I sponsor, they take the test and we work with the Enneagram because it does help them. I don't tell them what type they are. They figure that out on their own, but okay. Anyway, their passion or defect is pride in their giving, pride in their goodness. The virtue, the gift of the spirit that they get when they return to their true selves is humility. The lie that they live under is if I give enough, I will be loved. So they long to be loved. And if they give enough, they will be loved. Their mantra is ask for what you need and ask again, for the best love comes from a full well. Every true 2 that I've ever worked with or talked to, when I read their mantra or they say their mantra, they tear up because it's very difficult for them to ask for what they need and ask again. For the best love comes from a full well. So so if you are a type 2, that probably touched your heart. All right, type 3 is known as the achiever. I picked the peacock because usually 3s are relatively showy, and their passion or defense is self-deceit. It's not like they steal. It's not like that. It's like they deceive themselves, and their virtue is self-honesty. Right? That's what veracity means. So the gift of the spirit that they get when they return to their true selves is self-honesty. The lie that they live under is if I seem successful, I will be happy. So to them, that outward appearance of success is like the most important thing in the world. And their mantra is to get to truth. I must be informed by my feelings, because threes also avoid any kind of deep feeling. All right. To get to truth, I must be informed by my feelings. And in some cases, by the way, you will go, yeah, not me. That's not me. That emotion might come up, or it might be something else. Okay. So let's go on to four. The four is known, I picked the unicorn because they're very unique, obviously. And the four is known as the individualist. Their passion or defect is envy. And it isn't like they wish someone else didn't have something. It's just they're sad that it's not them that has it, right? And they live very comfortably in melancholy, and they often choose melancholy. The gift of the spirit that they get is equanimity. And in that case, my description of that is just the ability to see that we are all one. We all have good and bad in our lives. We all have, love, and we all have anger, and we all have all those things in our lives. The lie that they live under is that I am unique and people need to know that. Their mantra is, I have everything I need in this moment to grow. All right, the type 5 is I pick the bear because they hibernate, and 5s are very comfortable being alone. My husband is a 5. They're very comfortable being away from other people. They're known as the observer. Their passion or defect is greed, and it's not like money greed. It's mostly greed for knowledge, right? They amass knowledge more than anything else. And their virtue or gift of the spirit is non-attachment. They're very, very able to let things and people go. They're very capable of doing that very easily with no emotion whatsoever. Okay, the lie that they live under is that knowledge is the answer to everything. Knowledge is the answer to everything. And their mantra, which I think is awesome, is making contact with my direct experience and feelings will bring greater clarity and knowing. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, type 6. I picked the little bunny, first of all, because it's such an adorable picture, but bunnies are afraid of everything. And 6s, they're known as the loyalist, but their defect is fear, and they are afraid of everything. They are the worst case scenario people, right? Something's going to happen down the road. They can list every worst possible scenario that could happen. Their virtue or gift of the spirit is courage. Okay, their gift of the spirit, when they return to their true selves, is courage. And the lie that they live under is people are untrustworthy and I must keep myself safe. Their mantra is faith is believing in things unseen. I am guided within. All right, the 7, yet another picture I absolutely love. And I think this fits the type 7 perfectly. So type 7 is the adventurer. Their passion is gluttony, and it doesn't necessarily mean for food. It just means for everything. They want more experiences. Their gift of the spirit is sobriety, which means not having the need for more, because the lie they live under is live for the day, one after another. Let's go, more. That's the way they live their lives. And their mantra, another one that I absolutely just fits so perfectly. Focus and staying present are my holy work. I am enough. Focus and staying present are my holy work. They tend to bounce around, right, from thing to thing. But their holy work is to stay present. I am enough. Okay, the type 8, which is what I am. I picked the wolf, not because 8s aren't lone wolves necessarily, but I picked it because I saw this sign one time, ironically, in a bar, and it said, wolves don't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. And I really like that. I identified with that perfectly. So that's why I picked the wolf. The challenger, basically type 8, their passion or defect is a lust for intensity. Some people think that 8s seek conflict, and I would always say I don't seek conflict, but I don't run from it. I'm not sure that's 100% true when I was younger, but whatever. And then the virtue of the gift of the spirit is innocence, which I talked about, seeing through fresh eyes. The lie that 8s live under is I must be strong and in charge to be complete. And the mantra for the 8 is in my vulnerability lies my strength. And I will tell you, when I first heard that, I'm like, what the fuck? No, vulnerable, what? Right? So no. So, and I say my mantra all the time, in my vulnerability lies my strength. So it just softens that ego part, that ego wall, right, that the ego has built. All right. And the type 9 is also known as the peacemaker. Their passion is sloth, and it doesn't mean laziness. A lot of people interpret sloth as laziness. It means a willingness to delay action or to delay decisions or to delay everything. Their gift of the spirit that they get when they're in their true selves is right action at the right time. And the lies that they live under is, can we all just get along, please? And I'll think about that tomorrow. So that idea of they just delay. Their mantra is resolve small things before they become big things. All right, and with that, that is the end of session 0, but I'm now going to cover what happens in the other sessions as kind of an ad for the rest of the stuff that we're working on. So I just covered type 9, which was the peacemaker and all this stuff with their mantra and all that. The following week, what I do is now I introduce a new name as opposed to the peacemaker, which there's nothing wrong with peacemaker, but I'll tell you, if I was the one, I would prefer not to be called a perfectionist, right? So, okay. So I found in another book names that I think are what the true self, what I aspire. I've always believed that if I can give you a vision of what to aspire to, you have a better chance for growth than if I keep calling you what you used to be, right? So the gentle mystic is what the 9 can be in the future, and mystic just means like spiritual seeker. So they're a gentle spiritual seeker, right? And they are striving. So the next week I cover this. They are striving to feel at peace by avoiding directness, avoiding conflict, and avoiding making decisions. And then, of course, the mantra. Okay. So now and then weeks later, they have all this information, right? All of this information is there later. Notice at the bottom are the things I've already covered. And then up at the top are some of the other things I've covered. So literally I am layering information. If you already know the Enneagram, this probably seems super simplified, but the idea is this is how, right? This is how you take something very complex. This is how I take something very complex and teach it to you in a way that you can utilize it. The vast majority of growth with this, like really growing with it, is going to be after the session, not during, right? After the 12 weeks are up, then it's like, oh, okay, how do I use this in the future? Because I'm basically helping them plug the Enneagram into their 12-step program. It is not intended in any way to replace it. It is intended to augment so that the 12 steps, the 3rd and 4th and 18th time through, we basically are utilizing the Enneagram to help drive it deeper. Okay. Another example is the 6. This is the week 1. Notice that it's the same stuff from week 1. This is what I have week 2. So this person that lives in fear, what they aspire to, at my best, I am a courageous pathfinder. That's what the 6 would say. And they're striving to feel secure by avoiding being told what to do, avoiding being not prepared, avoiding self-doubt. Okay. And then weeks later, this is what theirs looks like. It has all the information I've already covered at the bottom and then all the other stuff at the top. I'm going to do one more here, which is the 7. Right. So the first week, they're the adventurer. They need more all the time. And then their virtue is not needing more all the time. Right. And then the following week, they are the joyful visionary. And they're striving to feel satisfied by avoiding negative emotions, avoiding roles, and avoiding lack of options. Okay. And then obviously in the future weeks, this is what it looks like. All right. We do have, I tie this to the steps. So one way that we do that is I have a weekly challenge by type, and it is designed to help you see the crack in the shell from your 12-step work. Okay, so as you crack that, you have cracked that shell in the 12-step work and you've grown. So this isn't like, this truly isn't, this class is not intended for beginners. The perfect person to come to this class is somebody who's worked the 12 steps and basically not disillusioned from the 12 steps, just deep enough into it, been through it enough that it's like, I need something a little bit deeper, a little bit more. Because obviously the big book, Bill built that, right, to basically put out the fire, right? So now we need other things. And I think that's really what Friendly Circle Berlin is about, right? We need these other things to help augment our program. Okay. And once again, it's designed to help you see the crack in the shell from the 12-step work. Because if you don't see it, it might as well not have happened. Right? You want to be able to see, you want to be able to observe yourself behaving in those, or you see it crop up so that you can stop from behaving that way, right? That's how you can live clean. Because I live in 10, 11, and 12. Live clean, seek God, help others, right? Okay. So basically we try to give some activities anyway. So this is like just one of the sheets from step 2. And so there's like the session 2 weekly wrap up, right? The main thing is we ask everybody to memorize your mantra and say it as you introduce yourself, just like you say, I'm a compulsive eater. I would in a 12-step meeting. In this, I would say, I'm Cheryl. I have the characteristics of an 8. I have the characteristics of an 8. In my vulnerability lies my strength. Then I say that. That's my mantra. Okay. We ask them to do the step wrap-up challenge every week, and it's found in their session assignment sheet, which is on surrenderschool.org. And then every once in a while, we'll put a video. I'll put a video in the assignment. I would just want them to watch a video for 5 minutes or something. No heavy duty homework. And then read specific pages, and in some cases, just specific paragraphs. And then all sessions and contents are recorded and can be found on surrenderschool.org. So to register for that, you're going to go to surrenderschool.org. You've already seen